It all started with a letter in my mailbox, one of those official envelopes that made your stomach twist the moment you saw it. Inside was a notice from the HOA, informing me that I was being fined $2,000 for unauthorized hunting activity on my own property. My jaw clenched as I read it again, just to be sure I hadn't misunderstood. Unauthorized. I owned over 40 acres of wooded land, passed down through my family, where I'd hunted deer and turkey since I was old enough to carry a rifle. But apparently, the HOA had decided that my lifelong tradition was suddenly a violation of their so-called community standards. I went to the next HOA meeting to contest it, walking into the room with my paperwork and deeds tucked under my arm. The moment I stepped inside, I could feel the eyes on me, judgmental, smug, as though I were a delinquent child summoned before a teacher. Karen, the HOA president, wasted no time. Hunting creates noise, danger, and disrupts the peaceful environment of the community, she said, her voice dripping with authority. I tried to explain that my land was outside their jurisdiction, that my hunting was safe, legal, and responsible. She smirked and tapped her pen against the fine notice. If you want peace here, you'll follow the rules like everyone else. It wasn't about safety. It wasn't about peace. It was about control. The HOA had been itching to tighten their grip on me ever since I refused to join their little committees, refused to landscape my yard the way they dictated, refused to bow down to their constant demands. Hunting was just the excuse they needed. They wanted to make an example of me, to show the whole community what happened to anyone who stepped out of line. But they had forgotten one crucial detail. I don't step out of line, I redraw it. For weeks, I stewed over the injustice. I paid the fine under protest, knowing full well they'd only come after me again. Every time I heard Karen's voice echoing in my memory, telling me to follow the rules, it stoked the fire inside me. And then one day, as I was checking my trail cameras deep in the woods, I noticed a group of hikers strolling along one of the trails. They weren't trespassers. They were HOA members, enjoying the very land I owned. My land was their favorite hiking escape, a place they bragged about at meetings as if it belonged to them. That's when the idea hit me like a thunderclap. I dug into county records, checked maps, and confirmed what I already suspected. Nearly all the trails the HOA used for their community hikes and nature walks ran straight across my property. They had organized events on my land for years, never asking permission, never showing gratitude, never even acknowledging my ownership. They acted like it was theirs, like I was just some inconvenience living on the edge of their kingdom. But the deeds were clear, the forest was mine. And suddenly, I knew exactly how to respond to their fine. The next morning, I ordered heavy-duty steel signs, private property, no trespassing, hiking trails closed permanently. When they arrived, I spent an entire weekend planting them at every trailhead, every fork, every hidden entrance the HOA loved to sneak through. I didn't stop there. I hired a crew to put up reinforced fences at key crossing points, making sure there was no easy way around. By the time I was finished, the hiking paradise the HOA bragged about was locked tighter than a vault. The reaction was immediate. That Saturday, the HOA hosted one of their family hikes, only to find the entrance blocked by a fresh metal gate and a bold sign staring them in the face. Parents grumbled, kids cried, and Karen nearly choked on her own outrage. She pounded on the gate with her fists before storming off, barking into her phone as though one angry call could undo the reality in front of her. But no phone call could change the fact that she had fined me for hunting on my own land, and now I had closed off the land they loved most. Soon, the complaints began pouring in. Residents who once ignored me at meetings now crowded my driveway, pleading with me to reopen the trails. They told me their kids loved the hikes, that their health depended on walking those paths, that it wasn't fair to punish the whole community for the actions of the HOA board. I listened politely, but my answer never changed. Talk to your HOA. They're the reason the trails are closed. And with every disappointed face that walked away, I knew my message was spreading like wildfire. Karen doubled down. She sent cease and desist letters, claiming the trails were community resources. I responded by sending copies of my deeds, stamped and notarized. She threatened to sue. My lawyer laughed and wrote back with a single line, "Trespassers will be prosecuted." The HOA was used to bullying homeowners into submission, but they had finally met someone who couldn't be intimidated. And worse, I had the one thing they couldn't take back, the land beneath their feet. Week by week, the once lively hiking club withered away. Events were canceled, flyers went unposted, and whispers spread through the neighborhood about Karen's failure. She had promised safety, control, and community pride, but all she delivered was locked gates and angry members. The same people who once cheered her on now turned against her, blaming her arrogance for ruining the one thing they all enjoyed. By the second month, the HOA was in chaos. Their hiking club, once the pride of the neighborhood, was gone. Residents stopped attending meetings, frustrated that their fees were going to lawsuits and petty battles instead of community improvements. Karen, once the queen of smug authority, was now the target of whispers and open criticism. I'd see her storming down the street, muttering under her breath, her perfect smile replaced by tight lips and angry eyes. She thought she could break me with a fine, but she had only broken her own reputation. I kept quiet, letting the tension build. People began to approach me differently now. Some apologized for the way they had supported the HOA against me. Others came with offers, money, favors, anything, to reopen the trails. I always gave the same answer: I don't negotiate with people who try to control me. Tell your board to fix their mistake. Every word was like salt in the wound for Karen, but I didn't care. Respect is earned, and they had disrespected me for far too long. The HOA tried one last desperate move. They offered to reimburse me for the hunting fine if I reopened the trails. I sat across the table from Karen and her board, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. She leaned forward, trying to sound diplomatic. Let's put this behind us. You get your money back, we get the trails back, and the community heals. I shook my head slowly. You don't get to dictate terms anymore. The land stays closed, permanently. The look on her face was priceless: shock, rage, and helplessness all rolled into one. When the news spread that I had refused their offer, the HOA's downfall accelerated. Attendance at meetings dropped to nearly nothing, residents stopped paying dues, and eventually, the board was left scrambling to keep even basic operations afloat. Karen resigned shortly after, her reputation shredded beyond repair. Her dream of running the community like her personal kingdom had ended in a humiliating collapse, all because she thought she could fine me for hunting on my own land. Meanwhile, life on my ranch was better than ever. I hunted, when I pleased, fished in the creek that wound through my woods, and enjoyed the peace and quiet of knowing the HOA had lost all power over me. My trails were mine again, and the forest grew silent without the chatter of HOA hikers trampling through. Sometimes, as I sat in my tree stand at dawn, I thought about how easily things could have gone differently if they had just left me alone. What struck me most was how quickly people's attitudes changed once the HOA lost its grip. Neighbors who once ignored me now waved when they passed. People who had laughed at my old-fashioned independence now admired it. The same community that tried to control me had learned, the hard way, that respect isn't demanded through rules, it's earned through boundaries. And my boundaries had never been clearer. Every so often, I'd see families at the edge of my fences, staring longingly into the woods. Some would even call out, asking if I'd ever consider opening the trails again. I'd smile and shake my head. Not while I still own it. It wasn't cruelty, it was justice. If I had given in, they would have learned nothing. But by keeping the land closed, I made sure the lesson stuck for generations. As time passed, the story of what happened spread far beyond the neighborhood. People in nearby towns whispered about the rancher who shut down an entire HOA with a single decision. My land became something of a legend, a reminder that not everything can be controlled, that sometimes, the little guy with grit and principle can outlast the biggest bully in the room. And every time I walked my trails alone, I felt that satisfaction deep in my bones. Karen moved away eventually, unable to face the shame of her failure. The new board tried to rebuild trust, but they knew better than to ever cross me again. I never needed to attend another meeting, never needed to argue with them again. The fences stood, the signs glared, and the land remained mine, untouched by their grasping hands. They had thought they could take away my freedom. Instead, they had lost theirs. Moral of the story: when people try to take what is yours through arrogance and control, don't bow down. Stand your ground, use the truth as your weapon, and let their greed undo them. Real strength isn't in fighting loud battles, it's in setting boundaries so firm that no one dares to cross them again.